Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, October 6th. We'll start by introducing you to your City Council.
Council members Erpenbach.
Here.
Jamison.
Here.
Karski.
Here.
Kiley. Rolfing.
Here.
Staggers.
Present.
Anderson.
Here.
Erickson. Here.
Thank you, Council. We will start our meeting with an invocation, and Councilor Erpenbach, would you be kind enough to lead us in that blessing?
Happy to do that.
Thank you. We'll have the blessing, and then after Councilor Erpenbach is done with the blessing, if you'd remain standing for our Pledge of Allegiance. Councilor Erpenbach, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Will you bow your head as I pray? Dear wise and loving Creator, first let me say thank you on behalf of all who are gathered here today. Thank you for your many and abundant blessings. Thank you for life itself, for the measure of health we need to fulfill our callings, for sustenance and for friendship. Thank you for the ability to be involved in useful work and for the honor of bearing appropriate responsibilities. Tonight, dear Lord, I pray for our mayor, for the various levels of city officials, the public and citizens who are here with us this evening, and in particular, I pray for my colleagues and me on this assembled council. I pray too for the agenda set before us today. Please give us an assurance of what would please you and what would benefit those who live and work in and around our beloved city of Sioux Falls. It is in your most blessed name that I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, good evening, everybody. Amy, welcome. Come on up, please. I do have a proclamation that I'd like to read, but before I do, I'd just like to introduce you to Amy Carter. Amy, would you mind introducing yourself to the people of our town? Tell people what you do.
Sure. Hi, I'm Amy Carter. I'm the director with Children's Inn, the domestic violence shelter here in Sioux Falls, and I'm here tonight representing the Minnehaha County Family Violence Council.
Amy, thank you. The proclamation reads, whereas over 4 million women are victims of severe assault by their intimate partners annually in the United States, and nearly 1 in 4 women are likely to be abused by a partner in her lifetime. Whereas children who grow up in violent homes are abused and neglected at a rate higher than the national average. Whereas in 2014, our Sioux Falls Police Department and the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office responded to 1,266 domestic assault calls. Whereas in 2013, 50% of the murders in South Dakota were a result of domestic violence. Whereas a dedicated group of citizens have been fighting domestic violence together through the Minnehaha County Family Violence Council for 33 years. Whereas wearing a purple ribbon during the month of October will demonstrate support for the victims of domestic violence. Whereas the voices of victims offer us important insight into the personal pain and loss that these victims endure, and are voices that deserve our attention, our respect, and our support. Now, therefore, I, Mike Huther, Mayor of the City of Sioux Falls, do hereby proclaim the month of October 2015 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Sioux Falls, and I urge all citizens to become actively involved to work towards improving victim safety and holding perpetrators of domestic abuse accountable for their actions against individual victims in our society as a whole. Amy, on behalf of all the people that live in this town, thank you for your work. Thank you, team, for their work. And thanks for bringing this to our attention tonight. If we can give Amy a round of applause, please.
Mr. Mayor, while it's on your mind and in honor of the proclamation for Domestic Violence Month, could I just take a moment?
Absolutely.
Take Back the Night is Thursday evening this week, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. or so at the Old Courthouse Museum. It's one of those important events where you really can show your support of those victims. Tremendous stories there of women who have been in that situation, and the main speaker is one that was nearly murdered, was left for dead. And so I'd invite you to be there. It is free and open to the public. And so Thursday night, 6 o'clock, Old Courthouse Museum.
And there's supper that night, too.
Free food.
Free food, chili and pie. And so,
Right, who can resist?
Councilor Bach, thank you.
Thank you.
And Tamara, you've got something that's really important that you'd like to talk about.
Yes, I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege, Mayor. I'd like to wish a happy birthday to my twin brother, Timothy John Miller, in Watertown, South Dakota. Happy double nickels, Timmy.
So that means not only did Timmy have a birthday, that means Tamara had a birthday. Happy birthday to you, Tamara. Thank you. Thanks for your efforts. And Councilor Erickson, please.
Thank you. Just personal privilege, Mr. Mayor. I had the honor a couple weeks ago to be in an advanced communications class with Mrs. Kringen, at Sioux Falls New Technology High School, and taking a page out of Councilor Stager's book here. We invited them to come this evening and sign in, and we do have 2 students this evening, and myself and Councilor Karski will be judging their debate next week as well. So thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you for being here. Councilor Erickson, thank you as well. Council will now move to our consent agenda. Any motions, changes?
Vote for approval, Anderson.
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to approve our consent agenda, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. If there is no discussion, a roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski? Rolfing?
Yes.
Staggers? Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Now our regular agenda, Council. Any motions or changes to that?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Erpenbach.
Councilor Erpenbach's made a motion to approve our regular agenda tonight, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Staggers?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 7-0. Thank you. Folks, welcome. It's good to have you here tonight. This is a public input portion of our meeting. Basically what that means is that you can come up, you can engage the council on any topic that you want, that you feel is important to discuss. All we'd ask is that you just introduce yourself to the people of our town, and if you can keep your comments to 5 minutes or less, the council would appreciate that. Now, if it is a topic that is on the agenda later on, we would ask you to just hold your comments until that time. But otherwise, just feel free to come forward. Anybody interested? Welcome.
Hi. I'm Doreen Weinstein, and I'm here to talk about my position on boulevard plantings. I was born here and have lived in Sioux Falls my whole life. I'm a master gardener, and I've been gardening in the boulevard for about 15 years. I live on a busy street, Phillips Avenue, and I've gotten a lot of feedback from people over the years regarding my boulevard garden. Whenever I'm working out front, people stop and ask me about my flowers or compliment me on the beauty of the garden. I've even gotten several letters addressed to the flower house or the garden house thanking me for the beautiful vista on their walk to drive to work. People even tell me they drive by purposely to get their green fix, and they say they use it as an inspiration for their own yards. It's very gratifying to know that people enjoy my yard, and I've come to think of it as my community service project. Last year, I was on the Minnehaha Master Gardener's Garden Tour. The past few weeks, a friend of mine drove around town, and we were looking at other boulevards and how people decorate them. And it's very apparent that people are creative in how they personalize that area. Some install rocks, boulders, flagstones, astroturf, flowers, ground cover, vegetables, even decorative brick mailboxes, all in an effort to beautify their property. Since residents are responsible for taking care of the boulevard, it makes sense to plant something there that can withstand the salt and chemicals applied to the roads during the winter. Kentucky bluegrass, which is the lawn of choice throughout the Midwest, is one of the poorest choices because it doesn't survive the abuse from the road chemicals. It requires a large amount of water, fertilizer, and weed killer to look good. And even with yearly reseeding, the grass starts looking pretty rough by July. It's the nature of the grass. It goes dormant, and the roots stop growing when the ground temperature reaches into the 80s. So it turns brown, and then that stimulates the homeowner to put fertilizer on it, which then requires a lot of water so you don't burn the grass, and you hope to get it green again. It's a vicious cycle, and all it does is stress the grass into growing when its natural tendency is to rest during the heat of the summer. That's the reason I started gardening in the boulevard. The grass was high maintenance and constantly thirsty, and I had to baby it all the time. So one spring, I just decided to remove the grass and plant the flowers, and I've never regretted it. Due to regular road work on Phillips, the garden has been torn out 2 to 3 times at the very least. People always ask me if I'm going to put the garden back, and I always do. The garden has become a landmark of sorts around the neighborhood, and since I've done it, lots of other neighbors have followed suit. Perennials in the boulevard make sense from an ecological standpoint because it slows and reduces runoff during rainstorms and helps prevent flooding and overflow of the sewer system. Plus, it reduces contaminants entering the river, making a healthier environment for everyone. I'm proud to live in Sioux Falls. It's a forward-thinking town, and as a result of homeowners' open-mindedness and creativity, we can enjoy and welcome the diversity of different plantings that in turn only adds beauty to our city. A good example is the McKinnon Park area. The beauty of the park, often called the jewel of the Sioux Falls Park system, overflows into the boulevards, and everyone enjoys the peaceful vistas planted and maintained by the Parks Department. In conclusion, many plants can withstand the ravages of winter road chemicals, but grass isn't one of them. On a side note, in our drives around town, one thing that struck me is the large number of homes that have no identifying house numbers. How do they get pizza? Besides that, it's a safety issue from police, fire, and rescue standpoint, and an ordinance should be addressed and enforced, making it mandatory to have legible numbers on each home. Thank you.
Doreen, thank you. Very good job. Appreciate that. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council? Welcome.
Scott Arisman, Sioux Falls. I'd first like to start by welcoming Kermit Staggers back for his, he had a little brief vacation there. Anyway, I'd first like to start out by congratulating the executive director of the zoo for getting almost a perfect audit this last time around. She's really turned the zoo around. As a person who was very negative about the facility when we bought it, I had the pleasure of meeting her at a barbecue kind of event this summer, and she told me about all the wonderful things going on out there, and it's truly a really great asset to our community. And if you ever have a chance to meet her and talk to her in person, she'd love to tell you about all the wonderful things that go on there. I'd like to talk about something else that's been concerning me, and not only me, and a lot of people in this community have said to me it concerns them. And there's been several articles in the newspaper about whether or not our mayor is running for higher office, whether that's governor or whatever, after he leaves. That part doesn't concern me. I say, go for it. Anybody is willing to do whatever they want to. The part that concerns me is that there hasn't been an formal or an informal announcement made about that. And any time an elected official, in the capacity of what they're elected in currently, as the mayor, is going around our state and doing things in the focus of city business, but actually using our tax dollars to actually be campaigning for another office, that's a questionable thing to do. So just asking you, Mayor, if you are going to run for higher office, just try to announce sooner rather than later. And if you want to campaign, please use your own money to do so and not mine. I'd like to finish by, after watching a presentation this afternoon about the parking ramp that seems to be changing quite a bit. Anyway, it seems, and maybe I got some of this stuff wrong by listening, because I only watched it once, but that the city is going to be putting in $10 to $12 million for this parking ramp, But then it sounded like most of the parking ramp was going to be used by the hotel and the apartment dwellers, and we would be getting paid a lease. I guess I don't understand why we would be using taxpayer money to build a parking ramp for a private entity to use for parking. If they're going to build a building and have apartments and hotels in there and charging for that, they can charge for parking too and build their own parking ramp. I'm all for free enterprise. I'm all for them making loads of money from their facility. I just don't think that we need to put into that if we're not getting anything out of return. There was also another question was asked if a TIF was going to be used, and I guess that's in the air now too. So now not only are we going to be giving 10 to 12 million for a parking ramp, we're also going to be giving a tax rebate, might be giving a tax rebate to the facility. And then the last thing, and I might have heard this wrong too, when this was first rolled out to us, we were told it was going to be a public park on top of that building, and now it's being said that it's going to be a park only used by the hotel. I'm sure you'll be able to go up there and stuff, and so now we're going to be giving 10 to 12 million and possibly a TIF, and now we don't even have a public park. So I hope you guys look at this. It seems like it's a constantly changing plan, and I hope we take a better look at it before we start throwing money at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hirschman. Welcome.
I'm Kathy Brachtelsbauer, and I want to talk about some things we value in Sioux Falls. And I think that you value these same things that I want to mention. There was a very nice letter to the editor recently, someone extolling the value that she placed on the bike trail. And I think that's something that many, many people in our city place a very high value on, and we appreciate your support of that. And of many other things that we value in our city, like the libraries and the parks, and even the streets and sidewalks and the sculpture walk and so many things. And I want to just mention that there's a very high value placed on those, even though we don't charge a fee every time we use them. And that's why I wanted to bring this up, because sometimes I hear in the discussions about the swimming pools and the bus rides, somebody says, and I don't remember who says it, people don't value what they don't pay for. And so I just want to mention that we aren't paying each time we use those things, but we really do value them highly. We also, of course, pay for them, as we do for buses and pools and all the other many city services. And it's in the case of things that are provided by our sales tax, it's lower income people, of course, that are paying a higher portion of their income, so they certainly do pay for these things. So I just want to remind you that we really do value things, even if we don't pay for them each time we use them. Now, I make some suggestions sometimes about swimming fees in particular, and that's what I want to mention tonight. And sometimes people might think I'm being kind of unreasonable when I say we shouldn't be raising the fees for the pool. So I wanted to point out that there's some good reasons why it's really not unreasonable to say we could keep the swimming fees for the summer pools the way they are now. Of course, for the indoor, we can't because we haven't had an indoor pool, so that's another whole issue. But I brought this graph, and Mr. Davis is going to show you. And you'll see that, I have to zoom out. This is the earnings of people in our country from, and I assume it's fairly similar for Sioux Falls, we're not that different, from before the recession to since the recession. This graph starts in 2007. And the top line is the 95th percentile, the people who have the highest incomes. And you see, they're coming out higher than from before the recession, so we're not quite so worried about them. But then the middle line, the green one, is the median income. And you'll see that those incomes in real terms haven't really picked up to where they were before the recession, even now, this long after. And the pink line is the 10th percentile. In other words, percentile meaning only 10% of the people earn less than that. So they're pretty near the bottom of the economic scale. And their incomes are down even farther since before the recession. So I wanted to mention that because that's a good reason why the pool fees don't need to be higher than they were before the recession, because people really don't have that much income to work with, and yet we want their kids in the pool. Now, I wanted to find a graph with 2006 on it, so that's the other one. And so I found one of those. And it shows the same thing. You can choose any line on here. Each line is just a different population, part of the population, or a different methodology for calculating the incomes. And so pick any line you want. And they all show, starting in 2006, you see where they are, and then over at the right-hand end, you see where they end up now. They haven't caught up to where we were before the recession. And the reason I want to mention 2006 is that was the year that 22 4th and 5th graders went to the park board and asked for free swimming for all the kids, because they said, most of us can swim, but sometimes our friends don't have the $1 that they need to come to the pool with us. So in 2006, the fee for getting to swim was $1. And we know now it's much more than that. Some pools are $2, some pools are $3. And then there's a proposal, you might be considering raising it even higher. So I wanted to point out that incomes really haven't recovered that much. So there really is a good reason for considering not raising the pool fees at this time. And I'm hoping that you'll think of this as a reasonable suggestion, not some far out thing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, Kathy, thank you as well. We appreciate it. Folks, welcome.
Bruce Danielson, Sioux Falls. There's a couple things I want to talk about tonight. The first thing is I was hoping that Heath would be here tonight. I'd like to thank Heath Hoffheiser and members of this council for helping us out on West 9th Street with the, we look forward to the completion of the experiment in signage and street markings to slow down the speed and reckless driving that's been going on out there. We've tried, some of us have tried for over 21 years to have this addressed, and we're finally starting to get an answer, and we really appreciate it. And the neighbors that I have talked to have been very excited about seeing what's going to happen with it. The second item is on the March 2015 North Phillips land sale of the old railroad land where the origami statue is. And still haven't heard where the origami statue is being stored, so we can make sure that it's safe. But we've got, I've been talking with several attorneys. I spoke with 4 just this last week on different issues, and we've been talking about the typos. Now, I got a letter from Diane Best, and I appreciated getting the letter and saying that, well, the parties have all agreed that the typos don't mean anything. Well, according to all the attorneys that I've talked to so far, every one of them have said that isn't a valid land sale unless it goes back through at least the consent agenda. And so if you want to have some problems, then we need to get the city attorney's office to put the paperwork back together, run it through the consent agenda in the next week or 2, whatever the schedule is, and just get it done and have that sale done properly. Because typos mean that there's a problem with the sale and it's not valid. And we want to make sure things are done right. And we're also looking at everything that's going on with the railroad relocation project, and that just means, oh, typo, who cares? You got a 3-inch binder of documents that we've never seen, typos in there, who cares? So we're just trying to get it straightened out and let you know that we are watching all of this stuff, which then adds to the, last Tuesday, the Sioux Falls Argus Leader published a My Voice letter that was written by me. It's been producing some interesting information and discussion results. We're asking to bring the following, now being seen on the screen, into the discussion. Because there have been, as you see there have been no independent reviews of the construction methods, management process, contract issuance, financial arrangements, including the bonding, and legal processes. In other words, we know nothing about the building except it will be a rusty, moldy hulk in a few years. For asking questions about this building and other city projects, this administration has tried to silence individuals, including myself. Why must this all be hidden from us? So we're asking for a full audit of the Denny Sanford Premier Event Center, including all of the signed original contracts with the builder, the original contracts with the subcontractors, operation audits, financing audits, all change orders. We would like to see who signed off on all the change orders. Full disclosure of the entire top secret settlement agreement recently announced. We have settlement agreements that if nothing needs to be fixed, why do we have a settlement agreement? We'll be back with more of the story's details in the near future. People are asking us questions, bringing it up, and this is a key to all of it right here. This little press conference we had, and promising, and all it was a legal bluff. So we're asking that this body, this is the policy-making body of the City of Sioux Falls. The City Council must develop pre- and post-construction construction audit protocol for all projects, especially those utilizing the manager at risk method. We do not intend to stop searching for the answers wherever they're hidden. For those who haven't seen the letter that was in the My Voice, I put some copies of it over here on the table. And we were promised a whole series of things involved with the construction of the event center. This was handed out by the city back in August of last year, and we were promised all kinds of mock-ups. We were promised to prove that there weren't holes in the tieback, there weren't holes in the process, that we weren't going to have rust in there. We've never cared at all in this whole discussion about the exterior of the look of the building, because every architect has a design. So if he wanted bulging siding, he wanted bulging siding. What we've discovered in all of the months, including before Rex, in May of last year when you asked the question here at the council about the bulging siding, bulging siding is bulging siding. That can be a design thing. But what we found out in this whole process, and I've been watching it from the beginning, I've tried to get the AutoCAD files and the whole works, trying to find out what's going on out there. And I've taken pictures. I see the torn Tyvek in the pictures. I've seen the water pouring out where they shoved great stuff into spots so the water wasn't coming out in inconvenient spots. Something needs to be done about the building. It's incorrect. We're being lied to. And we citizens are asking for full audits. There's a fiscal committee that's supposed to be discussing this. Kermit brought it up, and we'd like to see it happen.
Thank you, Mr. Danson. We appreciate that. Council, hope you don't mind. And I went 6 minutes, but I hope you don't mind. Welcome, sir. Good to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, my name is William Maurer, Sioux Falls. I had written you a letter. Excuse me.
Move your hat, please.
This is an honor to the military. You have a problem with it?
Yep, I do, because my son was killed in Iraq, and he would take his hat off when he was addressing.
I understand that, and this represents 80,000 MIAs and POWs of our country.
And most people will remove their hat in honor of the council. Thank you.
Mr.
Miller, go right ahead, sir.
What's that?
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, okay. I had written you a letter in July, and I had written Chief of Police a letter in June about an incident that happened with myself. In November of last year, I was accused of a hit-and-run accident. The police came over to my house and accused me of being in a hit-and-run. What I want to find out with the police department is when I was accused of this, and this party was from Minnesota, I had asked that there be a detective to look into this and to investigate it. And I just wanted to find out what the policies are with the police department. I put out $1,060 to defend myself for something that the City of Sioux Falls didn't even show up at the hearing. And what I wanted to find out is what's the policy. And I'd like to be reimbursed for the cost I had to put out for being accused of something I didn't do. And I've seen everybody else up here, they just input information. I don't know if, I realize the chief of police is not here, but, I would just like to find out if later, if I don't know, is he here?
Mr. Mueller, no, but we actually don't answer questions tonight.
All right.
We certainly will listen intently to what you have to say, and then we can follow up later on, sir. But if you'd want, you still have opportunity to speak, so go right ahead, sir.
So that's all I wanted to find out is what the policy is with the police department as far as what the city, because I didn't want to take any further legal action and come back against the city. I just wanted to find out how they operate in a situation like this when they can accuse you of something they didn't do. I have to put out money to defend myself, and they don't seem to care. When I wrote the chief of police, he just turned it over, didn't answer. You didn't answer my letter. I realize everybody's busy. I understand that. So if I could get some kind of response or, get a letter or something.
Mr. Mueller, thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on any topic? Well, thank you. We appreciate all the testimony in the conversation tonight. We'll now go to item number 21.
Item 21 is a transfer of a 2015-16 retail malt beverage license, including video lottery terminals, from Homefield Gaming Incorporated, Royal Casino, 4601 East Arrowhead Parkway, Suite 109, to MG Oil Company, Happy Jacks 5, 4601 East Arrowhead Parkway, Suite 109, CUP not required. Item 22 is a transfer of 2015-16 packaged malt beverage license from Melinda Copian, Park Ridge Gas and Pack, 1801 Southwestern Avenue, to Scott Bower, Park Ridge Gas and Grub, 1801 Southwestern Avenue, CUP not required. Item 23 is a new 2015-16 retail malt beverage license for Bold Behavior LLC, Bold Behavior 4805 South Louise Avenue, CUP not required. Item 24 is a new 2015 retail wine license for Bold Behavior LLC, Bold Behavior 4805 South Louise Avenue, CUP not required. Item 25, withdrawn per applicant request. I'll read it into the record. Special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for Catering America Incorporated, Chef Dominique's Catering, to be operated at Vance Thompson Vision, 3101 West 57th Street, for customer appreciation on October 8th, 2015. 26 is special one-day malt beverage and special one-day wine licenses for Catering America Incorporated, Chef Dominique's Catering, to be operated at 2601 Latigo Circle for a private social on October 30th, 2015.
Thank you, Tamara. Appreciate that. Council, any motions or changes on these items?
Move to approve, Karski.
May I make a recommendation?
We need to
Sure.
withdraw the
You
other one.
want to address item 25 first, Tamara? I'll tell you what. First, there has been a motion to approve.
I would second the motion
There's
to
been a
approve.
motion seconded. Yes.
Mayor, I would move to withdraw motion number 25.
Thank you.
Second, Erickson.
And that has been seconded. I appreciate that. We'll first vote on the motion to withdraw. Roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Staggers? Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. We'll now vote on the amended motion. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Thank you. Item number 27.
Item number 27 is a second reading, deferred from the City Council meetings on April 21st, June 2nd, and August 4th. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property at east and west of North Marlow Avenue and north of East Paddington Street from the AG Agricultural District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District, petition number 2249-2015, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
Jason Bieber, representing Planning and Building Services. We did have a request from the applicant to defer this application to the Monday, October 19th City Council meeting.
Jason, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor.
Second.
There's been a motion to defer this item to October 19th. by Councilor Rolfing, seconded by Councilor Erpenbach. Yes, Councilor Rolfing?
When do you expect this, Jason, to be resolved?
19th, we've gotten some information, so I think this one and another one down the list here will be heard on the October 19th.
Is that going to be including a way to get out of there, a secondary way to get out of there?
Yes, we've gotten some word from some of the other developers out there, and I believe they're agreeing to put in some other ways out.
Super, thank you.
Councilor Anderson Jr.?
Do you know how they're bringing equipment into that area now? Because they've done a lot of grading work up north of the Canterbury area.
I haven't heard. I was assuming that they were supposed to be using rosemary. I guess I haven't heard if they've been using a different way. I still assume that that's what they're doing. So,
thank you.
A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Item 28.
Item 28 is a second reading deferred from the City Council meeting of August 4th. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property south of East Benson Road and east of I-229 from the AG Agricultural and CN Conservation Districts to the I-2 Heavy Industrial and CN Conservation Districts, petition number 2895-2015, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
and we have received a request from the applicant to actually withdraw this item altogether. So,
Thank you, Jason.
Motion to withdraw?
Second.
Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to withdraw this item, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Item 29.
Item 29 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city, amending the fees subchapter of Chapter 95, Parks and Recreation.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Anderson Jr.
Been to postpone indefinitely.
And second, Rolfing.
There's been a motion to postpone this item indefinitely, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Item 30.
Item 30 is a second reading. An ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, rezoning property between South Norton Avenue and vacated South Duluth Avenue and West 39th Street and West 41st Street from the RD1 Twin Home Duplex Residential Suburban District and C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District to the C4 Commercial Regional District, including conditions as allowed in Section 160.650E, placing limitations on regulations and adding additional transitional requirements with the RE5 form, petition number 2541-2015, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval with the following stipulations which have been added to the ordinance. 1, an alternate site plan including detailed buffer yard plans be approved by the Planning Commission. 2, the proposed 113 employee parking spaces, 61 within the new parking lot and 52 behind the existing Billion Auto Kia building, will be permanently marked and reserved for Billion employees only. And 3, uses will be limited to outdoor motor vehicle sales and display and associated employee parking areas.
the applicant and owner here is Billion Companies. As you can see, it is located between 39th and 41st Street and Norton Avenue and the newly vacated South Duluth Avenue. The size is roughly 3.1 acres, and the purpose of this rezoning is to demolish the existing homes and construct additional sales display and an employee parking lot on that section. A level D buffer yard will be required along the north and west sides of this proposed use. That buffer yard includes a minimum of a 22.5 foot setback, a 6-foot berm, and 50 units of landscaping per every 100 lineal feet. The applicant has also worked with engineering on limiting some parking on the street in this area. Parking will be limited to 2-hour parking Monday through Friday from 8 to 6 on the east side of South Norton Avenue. That's the area represented in the green. And on both sides of West 39th Street, the area in the blue, that will be 2-hour parking too. They also will place a 4-way stop at the intersection of 39th Street and Norton Avenue, and that's represented in the red. And as Tamara had went through, there were 3 conditions added to by the Planning Commission to this specific rezoning request.
Jason, thank you. Folks, this is a second reading, so you actually have the opportunity to engage the council on this topic if you're interested. Would anybody want to engage the council on this topic? Welcome.
I would urge you to defer this item until you see an alternative site plan that you can approve, and you can stipulate in the rezone that this rezone is only effective if this site plan is approved. Because if you pass this, it goes back to the Planning Commission. They get to take a look at they get to figure out what the alternative site plan is, and they get to approve it. And that's not saying anything against the Planning Commission. They're good, honorable people, but you are the elected body. You vacated this road, and you represent them. You need to protect them. So I would want to see a specific plan, not a generic, the Planning Commission will come up with something. The buffer yard can be as little as 22.5 feet. I still don't think that's enough. If you think about our RS district, you have a 25-foot setback. So think about when you're standing at the front of your house and you're looking at the sidewalk. That's 25 feet. 25 feet. That is not enough distance in a buffer between the most intense commercial use in single-family homes across the street. It's just not enough. So I would be looking for that. The other thing is the street was vacated, but at least when I look at that site plan that's up there, I think I see egress and ingress where that street is at. The whole point of the vacation is because we're talking about how we're treating this as a green dot, although that was never approved in the comprehensive plan. But the idea was to get rid of access points. So are we going to close that off or not? Why would we vacate the street if we're just going to have ingress and egress? There's no point. Now, maybe the site plan isn't updated, and but I guess I'd want to know about that. I would want to see, I think, a full 45-foot buffer yard with a 6-foot berm right up against the parking lot. So in the comprehensive plan and in the zoning ordinance, maximum protection is afforded to residential uses. We are talking about putting the most intense commercial use right next to single-family homes. So the buffering needs to be extreme. And I don't think I see enough yet, and I don't know because I don't know what's going to happen next month when this would go in front of the Planning Commission. So I would urge you to defer it, make them come back with a very firm plan that you can feel good about, and not just put it in the hands of others. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate that. Folks, anybody else want to engage the council on this topic? Welcome.
Hi, I'm Jim Heine from Sioux Falls and Billion Family Limited Partnership. We're in agreement with all the things there. And in fact, maybe because we're just new at this, everything we provided has a plan there. Maybe it's not formal, but it meets all the shape Sioux Falls. And Duluth does not exit there direct through to the north. I just want to answer that question. I do want to say the city has a bunch of wonderful employees. We had the SWAT team from the county and the city out there, and those guys had, I don't know if there was any women, but anyhow, those people, the officers had a blast doing it and doing things, and they send us a very nice letter. You have some outstanding employees, and not to be outdone, the fire and rescue people are going to be out there in another couple weeks. So just want to thank you for your wonderful employees that you have.
Thanks,
Any
Jim.
questions that you have of me about this?
Not just yet, Jim, but thank you. We'll be right back. Thank you. Folks, anybody else want to get welcome, Mr. Danielson?
Bruce Danielson, Sioux Falls. When we were looking at all of this with the vacation and the Planning Commission and all the steps this thing seems to have gone through, one of the things that, especially at the vacation session we had here a month or so ago, the discussion was they were going to try and get rid of the right-in, right-outs and the cross-traffic issue with the going on to 41st Street. And on all the drawings, they even showed cars going in and out of that entrance. So we're going to leave the curb cut out, so we're going to still have a traffic problem. And if we're going to try and make this all of a sudden a magical green dot, and we're supposed to have quarter-mile rules, and we're supposed to get rid of all these entrances and exits and all these side streets going into this busy area, why are we keeping the Duluth cutout? That needs to be in the final plan that Greg was just talking about, that really needs to be firmed up before you people can vote on this. And let's do it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Danielson. Council, I'm going to put it in your hands. Any motions, discussion? Yes, Councilor Bach?
I had a couple questions, if I
Please.
could, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Heine, could you help me
Jim?
for a minute?
Thank you, sir.
Remind us, and then Jason, can you put the other slide up there that shows the color shot there, that one? That's as you just said to us, this is the plan we've been looking at all along, correct? There's an in and out there on Duluth, right?
Okay, I guess yes.
On to 41st Street.
Yes.
So this isn't something that you're telling us you think this is the final plan, this is what's going to go to Planning Commission in a week or so, or a couple weeks?
This will be, and I think with the shape Sioux Falls, with the 22.5 feet, the right shrubbery and all that kind of stuff, there's another document that I know that shows all the trees that meet shape Sioux Falls.
Right,
You know,
okay.
and the height.
Oh, I just wanted to confirm. I had seen that picture several times, and I understood that Duluth, that driveway there will the driveway will be in the place of where Duluth Avenue has been all along. So, good. Thank you. That's what I needed from you. Okay. If I could then also talk to Jason, can you just talk to me about the role of Planning Commission? What's their job?
The reason why, I guess maybe we'll go this route, the reason why we put that stipulation in there is because we were dealing with that more generic site plan that you've seen probably for 3 or 4 months. And we didn't have all the breakdown of the units that they were going to do, the total setback, and didn't have, I guess we weren't able to look through it to see that it's meeting or exceeding the shape places buffer yard requirements. And so that's why that stipulation was put in there. They have submitted this site plan within the last week or so that kind of breaks down all of the setbacks and all of the amount of landscaping units, which does meet the ordinance. So if this would have been submitted at the beginning, we probably wouldn't have had to do that condition, but we did want more time to really go through it and have a more detailed plan of exactly the amount of units that are in there.
And I don't disagree with that. I think essentially what I want to talk about just briefly, if I could, is that role of the Planning Commission in our lives as the City Council. They really are the land use people. Yep. They really do look at the way land is used, and they rule specifically on that. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Well, I think you did a good job there. They do look at how land is used, and one of their big challenges and one of their big applications that they approve are these alternative site plans, which we've seen them do a couple. I mean, a good example of one that's a similar buffer yard is Sanford parking lots. They approved that, looked at it in an alternative way, worked with the neighbors, worked with Sanford to get a buffer yard plan that not only works with the neighborhood, but can also work with Sanford and various other parties there. So they are very good at looking at this kind of stuff and utilizing the ordinance and figuring out the best way to do it and what we need for transitions to go into the single-family neighborhood.
Then if I could, one more question, Mr. Mayor. Would you just talk about the street as a buffer? In addition to the buffer yard that you're talking about, Would you talk about the street? We're not putting this buffer yard right next to a house.
Nope. There is an existing street there, which I'm assuming I'm not sure how big the right-of-way is, but the shape places zoning ordinance does allow you to use half the right-of-way to count your buffer yard, assuming then the street is an additional buffer yard from the single-family houses. So they are, I believe, providing 25-foot of buffer on their own lot. However, there's the sidewalk, the boulevard, the 60-foot street, and then the other properties on the other side. So it's a little bit different than if there were houses right next to this specific use. They'd only have to be 45 feet away from them. So they're actually farther away with the entire street.
Right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes, Councilor Anderson, Jr.
Okay, if we approve this tonight, then the alternate site plan will go to the Planning Commission. They'll get to approve that. Is there any appeal process for the neighbors at that point in time once they see a permanent plan?
I do not believe for an alternative site plan there is.
Okay.
So if we didn't condition an alternative site plan to look at this, I mean, they would just have to meet the Shaped Places zoning ordinance, and then they wouldn't need one. The whole point of that, like I said, was to try and get some more detailed plans to really make sure that they're meeting the requirements and they're providing an adequate buffer yard.
If I may continue.
Please.
I guess my concern is that this street is much narrower than the street we vacated already. And then they're going to be able to utilize half of that street as a buffer, correct?
Yes, just like any other application, sure.
Question to the city attorney. On this, in our discussion on Friday, if there was an amendment that they could not use that half of the street as a buffer, where are we at?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor,
No,
I need a
it's
moment.
fine. It's fine.
Sometimes we're put on the spot here.
But if I might,
Be
Mr. Mayor.
changing an ordinance allowance, I don't know if you could amend it that way, Counselor.
But the street isn't going to move. The street is going to be there, and the street provides space between the property we're talking about and the houses. Whether we ask them to make this buffer yard however wide, you can make it 100 feet wide, whatever, the street is still going to be there. It's not like he's going to dig it up and make the street go away. I don't understand your
No
question.
one's saying that. They get to utilize half the street as the buffer. So basically, it's not, the buffer really isn't as wide as what we're talking here. I don't feel. That buffer should be on their property,
Why then?
not the street. We already gave them a street.
But why did
Councilors,
they have this?
if I apologize, just the back and forth, probably don't want to do it that way, if you don't mind.
You're
But,
right.
but
I'm sorry.
no, you're doing fine. Councilor Anderson Jr., David, City Attorney Fifley answered the question probably as best he could with a short notice. But is there another direct question for Attorney Fifley or Councilor Urbanbach or Jim?
Okay, for Attorney Fifley, what is our options here for increasing the buffer?
I mean, it's a question for Jason, too. Jason, it's probably a better question for you, sir. Is there a way to have the applicant increase the size of the buffer?
Well, the way the ordinance reads, and maybe Dave gets into this a little bit more, but you can add additional transitional requirements by conditioning an alternative site plan. And then the way the ordinance reads there is an alternative site plan is approved by the Planning Commission. So I think you could probably condition bigger setbacks because that's part of the bulk regulations, but I don't know if you could specifically do additional buffer yards because that's what we're already doing with having the alternative site plan go back to the Planning Commission. But maybe Dave has.
Yes, Councilor Erickson?
Two questions. Since it will go back to the Planning Commission, and that's generally the step it does, can we, as a council, ask them to do that and then come to us for a vote? I don't know if that's normal or not, but that way then that would allow, I mean, I guess in this instance, it sounds like there's some interest in wanting to make sure that we see that. So that's the first one. The second one is, when is it going to the Planning Commission?
Them going to the Planning Commission would be dependent on them. They couldn't go any earlier than if, say, this is approved tonight, it wouldn't be effective till the end of October, so they could, earliest they could go is to the November Planning Commission.
21 days or?
Yeah, yep.
Sorry.
So if that's what they would like to do, it's dependent on when they'd submit their application. They wouldn't be allowed to get a building permit to construct the parking lot until their site plan, alternative site plan, is approved by the Planning Commission.
Thank you.
Councilor Erickson, did you get your first question answered, though? Or David, did you understand? It was a difficult one. I couldn't answer it. It was basically, is there an opportunity for the Planning Commission to review it and then have it come back to the council for more discussion or potentially an approval?
Thank you. I think the appropriate course would be to remand it back to the Planning Commission if you have some particular additional transition requirements that you would like to see, Counselor?
Good, thank you. Good job. Councilor Erickson?
One small follow-up. Is it customary and standard across the board to include half of the street in all rezones, or is it only C4? Is it any rezone?
The half the street is part of the buffer yard standard, so any site, if it's zoned office, if it's zoned multifamily, if it's zoned commercial, as long as you have a street, you can utilize half of that, similar to a good example is the fairway that went at 41st and Sycamore. They were allowed to use half the street for their buffer yard, so they provided, I think, 25 feet on site, and then with the half the street, they were over what's required. So that's a standard in the buffer yard for any time you need a required buffer yard.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor, we'll keep the discussion going, but just for the purposes of kind of some organization, could we have someone a motion to approve?
Move to approve, Erpenbach.
Then a motion to approve by Councilor Erpenbach, seconded by Councilor Karski. Any further discussion? Councilor Jamison.
I have a question maybe for the applicant, one of the...
Jim, thank you, sir.
Jim, I think you're sensing a hint here that the buffer yard between the single-family homes to the west and your property potentially would like to be expanded. How would you feel, and how would you, if you had to add the length of one more car to that distance, how would you be okay with that? Would you be willing to make that on your own?
Can I defer that to the owner, since Mr. Billigan's here, so he can answer that?
Good evening. Paul Korn. I'm working as a civil engineer for Billion. I'll just speak a little bit before Dave gets up in response to that question. But within that buffer yard, there's a 6-foot berm, basically. So right now, with a 25-foot setback, to achieve that berm, we're basically putting a retaining wall on the Billion side of the property. So if we expanded to a 45-foot buffer, we would basically eliminate the retaining wall, and then the berm would fall off on the other side. So from the street view, you're still going to see a berm, whether it's 25-foot buffer or a 45-foot buffer. So I just wanted to make that point regarding the berming and the effect from the street.
Dave Billion, I'm the owner of the Billion Automotive Group. I'm kind of confused, I guess, a little bit by all of this in a way, because I'm not a zoning and planning person. I can tell you that we did everything that we were asked to do by the planning and zoning people with regard to setbacks and buffers, and as I understand some of the response here, it wouldn't make any difference if we got a 6-foot berm, and so whether on the inside of that berm is another 10 feet, I don't know what difference it would make, because visually it wouldn't impact anybody that lives on the west. We're not asking to be treated any differently than anybody else, but I'd like to be treated, I would like to be treated the same. And if we're meeting all the conditions that everyone else has to meet for that type of zoning, which I believe we are, and if we've done our diligence and we've agreed to the different conditions, such as no building there, the employee parking ideas, and we did everything we thought we were supposed to do, I guess, to do it right. And that's the type of citizens we are, we want to be, and we want to be good neighbors there. But I would just like to be held to the same standards, I guess, that everyone else is hand to, and if we conform to the Sioux Falls beautification and the standard, what they call it, shape Sioux Falls, and that's what we do, well, then that I would hope would be sufficient just to be like everybody else.
Councilor Jameson.
Thank you, Dave. I have another question maybe then for Jason. Jason, this slide that you put up does help us. Thank you for that. It is a little different berming than maybe we're accustomed in other places, but in all fairness, the applicant, in my opinion, I thought that this land should be moved to zones C2 or something, and by all accounts, staff recommended C4, and so that they could instill this level D buffering. So the applicant is fair in arguing that he did do everything he was told to do through planning. The question I have then is this buffering that's in the top centerpiece with that little wall, is that the entire length of the parking lot on the west side, and does it also include the same kind of construction to the north?
I believe that's what they're proposing along both sides. Besides, maybe Paul can speak to that a little bit more. But along the specific detention pond at the north side, that looks like it's the same up there too. So that's how it would look all along on the west and north sides of it. And that picture is actually that Sanford parking lot that we had talked about before. That's similar to what they did there.
Thank you.
Councilor Karski.
Keep that picture up there. The 6-foot berm, that's measured from what point, height-wise? From the street, from the right-of-way, or from the parking lot?
Usually we measure that from the street or the property line in front of it. It would have to be 6 foot at the top of it.
From the, okay. I mean, a 6-foot berm, that's
pretty significant.
Yeah, and that picture on the lower left there, that's not a 6-foot berm, is it? That's probably about a 4-foot?
Well, they utilized, like I said, the alternative site plan, and where they come up to the top there with the retaining wall in the back, it's over 6 foot at the actual parking lot level because the street drops off a little bit there. So
it's lower than that. Okay. The only other question I have is the neighbors, the neighborhood, and we're talking about residential area. I haven't seen or heard anybody from the neighborhood get up to say if they were for or against this. Is there anybody here that opposes this plan as it is in front of us?
Jason, I think the question's intended, were there any folks who expressed dissatisfaction?
We haven't had anybody comment on this, and since I believe they went to the vacation, I think there were some people here. We didn't have anybody at Planning Commission or the 2 readings here, so I haven't heard phone calls. I mean, we send out letters. I didn't hear anything on it. So.
Thank you, Jason. Councilor, I'm going to go Anderson Jr. first, and then I'll go Councilor Bach. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to support this tonight. I don't believe it's Mr. Billion's fault or anything like that. I don't feel it's anybody's fault. It's just part of Shaped Places. And I feel this part of Shaped Places transitioning to a C4 and then these alternate site plans, in some of the conversations that I've been involved with planning, looking at this even on another development, I feel that this is part of Shaped Places that we should look at, and I'd like to request that at least land use consider taking a look at this so that we can discuss this over further.
Councilor Bach?
This isn't what I was going to say, but I have to respond to that. We keep turning Shaped Places into the boogeyman, and I'm getting kind of tired of it. You know, we approved it as a city council. It then also went to the citizens and was approved. And yes, there are pieces of it that we've had to massage a little bit, but this berming system is not a bad thing. This is really going to be an attractive thing. If you have to have this kind of a business in a neighborhood like this, and you do because this is their property and they get to do its property rights, this is going to be an attractive situation, and I think we need to stop beating up on Shaped Places. That is not the problem here. The problem here now is that we have taken this to the nth degree, and we've turned the Billion Corporation into the evil empire, I guess. I mean, I'm really uncomfortable with the way we're treating these people at this point. We have made them jump through more hoops than we make other people jump through. We're actually, in my notes, we have a proposed amendment that's going to take away property rights and that we won't allow them to build anything on this land that they have purchased, that all we're going to let them do is put cars and trucks there. We won't let them build a structure there, and that's taking away their property rights. I think they have gone far and above the standard that we've required of other businesses in the community, and I'm disappointed it's taken this long, but let's please vote on this and move along, please.
Councilor Jameson, do you have a motion to amend? You do. Could you do that, please?
Very good. I have a motion to amend by adding construction of buildings is prohibited to stipulation number 3.
Second, Karski.
There's been a motion to amend this by adding construction of buildings is prohibited to stipulation 3, and it has been seconded by Councilor Karski. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Okay, we're voting on the amendment.
It's on the amendment, yes.
We're voting on the amendment.
And the amendment is construction of buildings is prohibited.
Councilmember Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 6-0. The amendment. We now have an amended main motion. Is there any further discussion? And I will, should I say, a roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Very good. That has passed 6-0. Thank you. Item 31.
Item 31 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property at 4605 South Louise Avenue from the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District to the O Office District, petition number 3236, 2015, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
The applicant owner here is Bob Winkles. It is roughly 0.20 acres in size. It's located just north of 57th Street on Louise Avenue. The purpose of this specific rezoning is to combine it with the office lot he owns on the south and the north and construct a future office development. I don't think he has plans right out of the way, but he is getting the property ready. The aerial does show an existing house on there that has been demolished and removed from the property.
Jason, thank you. Did anybody want to speak to this item in the audience? Council?
Move to approve, Erickson.
Second, Anderson.
Councilor Erickson has made a motion to approve this item. It has been seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Item 32.
Item 32 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property southwest of Great Bear Recreation Area from the AG Agricultural District to the RS Single Family Residential Suburban District, petition number 3271, 2015, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
We have had a request by the applicant to defer this one also to the October 19th meeting. It's similar to the number 27 that we deferred earlier. So.
Thanks, Jason.
So move, Anderson. Second, Rolfing.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson Jr. has made a motion to defer this item to October 19th, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski? Yes. Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson? Yes. Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Item 33.
Item 33 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property at 4800 South Louise Avenue from the RA1 Apartment Residential Low Density District to the C2 Commercial Neighborhood and Streetcar District, petition number 3285, 2015, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. Planning Commission recommends approval.
The applicant here is Raquel Blount with Lloyd Companies. The owner is Gerald Zutz. It is located at that southeast corner of West 55th and South Louise Avenue. It's roughly 0.33 acres. They are looking at demolishing the existing apartment complex and then combining it with the two commercial lots to the south that were rezoned at the beginning of the year to construct another strip center similar to the one at the northeast corner of 57th and Louise.
Thank you, Jason. Folks, another second reading. Did anybody want to speak on behalf of this topic? Councilors?
Move for approval, Anderson. Second, Rolfing.
It's been a motion to approve and it has been seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Thank you, Council. Item 34.
Item 34 is a second reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota rezoning property at the southwest corner of West 12th Street and South Discovery Avenue from the CN Conservation District to the RA1 Apartment Residential Low Density District, including conditions as allowed in Section 160.650E, placing limitations on regulations within the MD1 form, petition number 3238, 2015, and amending the official zoning map of the City of Sioux Falls. The Planning Commission recommends approval 4-2 with the following stipulation which has been added to the ordinance. Number 1, buildings shall be no more than 1 story in height.
Yes, the applicant is also requesting a deferral to the October 19th meeting. We've been working with him to provide some additional transition to the neighborhood to the south. So he is looking at providing some twin homes along that south portion of the lot. So,
Thank you, Jason.
Move defer to October 19th.
Thank you very much. There's been a motion to defer this item to the 19th and it has been seconded. Thank you, Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 35.
Item 35 is to set a data hearing and second reading for Tuesday, October 13th, 2015 at 7 o'clock p.m. First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by repealing subchapter Ultimate Fighting of Chapter 113, Amusements, and Section 131.006, Ultimate Fighting, Contest, or Exhibitions.
Council, would anybody want to set a data hearing and second reading for Tuesday, October 13th?
So move, Anderson.
Second, Erpenbach.
Got a motion to set that, has been seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That has passed 6-0. Thank you, Council. Item 36.
Item 36 is a first reading to set a data hearing and second reading for Tuesday, October 13th at 7 o'clock p.m. First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, providing supplemental appropriations.
Mark, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Public Works, Parks, and Police tonight have additional appropriations for you on a first reading, and I'll take you through Public Works, then we'll transition over to Parks. All right, the key items that we're going to talk about for Public Works, we also have associated slides. The first, the additional $260,000 we'd asked for appropriation. We collected more plating fee revenue than what was estimated over the course of the 2014 and 2015 budget. The next item is to get $2 million of our STP funds, our DOT funds, so we can begin the property acquisition for the 26th Street, I-229, and Southeastern Avenue project. The fourth bullet there is we've talked a lot about doing the adaptive traffic control system on Minnesota Avenue. The DOT has partnered with us that they will fund the 41st Street. We've talked, Heath has guided this. It makes the most sense for us to join our funds together and hire one contractor. So this is us receiving the $600,000 of the state's funds so we can do one project. And then last, with all the work that's happening at I-29 and 229, the City of Sioux Falls has some property that the DOT needs to purchase, and we've worked out a transaction with them for them to purchase that land of $250,000. Okay, just a couple of slides really to highlight what the estimated budgets were for the plating fees and what we ultimately collected. It shows that the combined of the 2014 budget and actual and the 15 budget and actual, we've collected the additional $260,000. We'd like to get that appropriated and get that put to work. The next picture is the selected alternative for the I-229, 26th Street and Southeastern. The red X's are the property acquisition process that we'd like to begin so we can ultimately start that project in 2018. You'll see the majority of that project happen in 2019. This area, this is the adaptive traffic control system that the DOT has agreed to fund at those respective intersections, and that's what their $600,000 would get put to use on. And then this graphic is the property that the DOT wishes to purchase from the City of Sioux Falls, and we've established purchase amount, but also additional funds to work on our detention pond. Now I'll turn it over to Director of Parks, Don Kearney.
Good evening, council members. Don Kearney with Parks and Rec. Certainly pleased to be able to present this item to you tonight for the supplemental appropriation. By way of background, we currently have a capital project for enhancements to the brown bear exhibit out at the zoo. And in the course of designing that project, there was some interest from private parties to be able to enhance that project to do more than what we originally intended to do. And so for reference purposes, if Jason will help circle the existing brown bear exhibit, if you're familiar with that exhibit, that is what we originally intended to renovate. But with private interest in supporting additional improvements above and beyond what we have in the capital program, they have indicated that they would support that, and the zoo is supportive of that as well. And so there are a couple graphics to show you what that might look like. And then on the next slide, if Jason could transfer to that one, this would be the expanded viewing that would be provided. It really enhances what was originally proposed. And as you can see from the exhibit, it looks very interactive and very exciting for the zoo. So there is glass between the bears and, and the people, by the way. And so I would also mention that, again, all the money would, for the supplemental appropriation would be privately provided. It also mentioned that Dan Simon, the Director of Operations for the zoo, is here as well if you have any questions.
I think the glass was the main concern, Don. Yeah. Assistant Chief Burns, welcome, sir.
Councilors, Mayor, good evening. Assistant Chief Matt Burns from the Police Department. Basically, the federal grant funds of $487,500 and a general fund available balance of $202,500 will fund the $290,000 for the 5 officers hired under the 2014 COPS grant and $400,000 for overtime expenses, primarily for saturation patrols reimbursed by the Office of Highway Safety. As you know, in the past, with the federal grant funds, they come into the general fund, and then we, if needed at this time of the year, then ask them, have them supplement into our budget.
Thank you, Chief, Assistant Chief Burns. Thank you. Council, would anybody, well, thank you. We are setting a date of hearing and second reading for Tuesday, October 13th. Councilor Anderson Jr. just made that motion, seconded by Councilor Rolfing. Thank you. Yes, Councilor Jameson.
A question for Public Works Director Mark Cotter. Mark, on the adaptive traffic signals for 41st Street to be included with Minnesota Avenue at the same time, so that project is bid together, is that? And you identified perhaps you could save some money by bidding it out and having one contractor. We have several $100,000 left in our unobligated capital fund from 2014. If we were to include the West 12th Street, which I think is about $300,000 for the adaptive traffic lights as well, how could we figure out just what we might save by adding that in there? How could we do that?
I may have to do some additional research. Could I bring that back to the second reading by chance?
Oh, absolutely. I guess if there's an opportunity to hire one vendor to do all these roads,
right,
and they're in town, maybe there's an opportunity, that's all.
Yeah, there may be some efficiency with going to the market with that. Yeah, let me bring that back at second reading.
Thank you, Councilor Rolfing.
Mark, one last thing, I can't
Yes.
pass it. On the slide just before this, no, the one that we're going to sell the land to the, no, keep going forward.
I'll get it. I'll get it. Yep, I'll get it. That one.
Can you arrange to sell them a spoon next time instead of a knife?
I'll do my best.
I couldn't pass it up.
I'll
It
do
was
my
too
best.
good.
You're
Classic
officially
knife.
on the project team.
Very good.
Yeah,
Very
a little
good.
more.
Very observant there, Councilor.
Yeah.
Any roll
Thank
call
you.
vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jameson?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 37.
Item 37 is to set a date of hearing and second reading for Monday, November 2nd, 2015 at 7 o'clock p.m. First reading, an ordinance of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, amending the Code of Ordinances of the city by revising Chapter 124, Vehicles for Hire pertaining to transportation network companies, and amending the title of Chapter 124 to read Transportation Services.
Yes, Councilor Karski.
Just speak to this one real quickly. Earlier this year, I kind of looked into how difficult it would be for a citizen to be practice-free enterprise as a driver for a transportation network company, and pretty much discovered that anyone who does that could potentially be in violation of our ordinances. They're written, and the burdens placed on them would probably be too cumbersome for them to desire to comply with them. And with Councilors Erickson, Jameson, and Rolfing, we met with the City Attorney's Legal Office and our licensing department, and with the help of Jim David, our legislative and operations manager, we crafted the ordinance changes that you see before you tonight. These changes do not make any real significant changes to the work done by the Public Services Committee just about 2 years ago, a committee that I was on and that we did a lot of work on the Vehicle for Hire ordinance. I think that what we did there was appropriate, and this truly just adds language to it that allows for transportation network companies and, more importantly, our citizens to be involved in free enterprise. And Jim's going to kind of hit on the highlights of what the ordinance does here.
Good evening, Jim David, Legislative Operations Manager for the City Council. For first reading tonight is a proposed ordinance that allows transportation network companies, or TNCs, to operate in the City of Sioux Falls. As Councilor Karski had said, at his direction and in consultation with the industry, City Attorney's Office, City Council, and other municipalities, this ordinance was put forth for tonight's discussion. TNCs is a business model that uses an application or an app that's typically found in a smartphone to connect passengers to a TNC driver. A driver uses his or her personal vehicle, and drives when he or she wants to drive. Examples of major TNCs in the U.S. include Lyft, Sidecar, Uber, Wings, and Summon. When looking at the market penetration of the two largest TNCs, more than 150 cities in the U.S. have either Lyft, Uber, or both. In our region, this includes the cities of Ames, Cedar Rapids, Des Moines, Fargo, Lincoln, Minneapolis, Omaha, and St. Paul. Under this ordinance, any TNC wanting to operate in the city must acquire a business license. The license application will require basic information such as trade names, business addresses, corporate information, including officer names. The license fee will be $1,500 annually. For comparison, a vehicle for hire business, such as a taxi cab, bus, or limousine, is $50 for the first vehicle and $25 for each additional vehicle. And finally, a TNC must provide proof of a sales tax license when applying. To qualify as a TNC, only passenger pickups and payments through the TNC app are allowed. TNCs may not accept street hails or cash trips. When a passenger requests a ride with the TNC, the app must provide both the driver's picture and license plate of the car. A receipt is required through the app, and a TNC must retain their trip records for 1 year. This ordinance also sets a high standard for TNCs by requiring that vehicles must be 10 years or newer. A TNC may also be subject to an audit of its local records if its drivers are subject to an investigation. And then finally, this proposal prohibits them from acquiring a carrier license. This is the state-issued license that allows them to provide alcohol on board. The insurance requirements in this ordinance were agreed to by Uber, Lyft, national insurance companies such as Allstate, Farmers Insurance, State Farm, USAA, and trade associations, National Association of Mutual Insurance Companies, American Insurance Association, and Property Casualty Insurers Association of America. For drivers logged in and waiting for passengers, the ordinance requires primary automobile liability insurance in the amount of at least $50,000 for death and bodily injury per person, $100,000 for death or bodily injury per incident, and $25,000 for property damage. And $1 million in liability insurance is required when the driver is en route to the passenger and when they are taking the passenger to their preferred destination. Although the drivers are not licensed by the city under the proposal, a TNC is required to have a third-party criminal and driving background check on each driver. The TNC driver must possess a valid driver's license, vehicle registration, and liability insurance. The TNC is required to provide the driver's license information to the city on a monthly basis. For comparison, I listed the criminal background check criteria for proposed TNC driver in the existing vehicle for hire driver. You'll see here that the DUI under this proposal for a TNC driver is 7 years. They cannot have that on their record for 7 years. In the city ordinance for a vehicle for hire, it's 2 to 5 years. Hit and run or leaving the scene, they are not able to acquire a license. Under the vehicle for hire ordinance, it's 2 years. A crime of violence is 7 years. An existing ordinance, a crime of violence for a vehicle for hire is 10 years. Felony possession, distribution of controlled substances is 7 years. Under the cities, it's 5 years. Sex crime or any indecent exposure subject to registration requirements, they are not allowed a license. Under the city, the same. Sexual offenses or indecent exposure misdemeanor is 7 years. Under the city, it's 5 years. And then the TNC regulations also prohibit eluding the police, reckless driving, or driving on a suspended or revoked license. They're not allowed to be a TNC driver. Use of a motor vehicle to commit a felony, fraud, crime involving property damage is 7 years, and has had 3 or more traffic offenses in the prior 3-year period, and they're not allowed a license. To level the playing field of vehicle for hire companies, this ordinance does remove the required annual certified mechanic inspection and the $1 million general liability requirement. The ordinance will maintain the $500,000 vehicle liability for taxis, buses, and limousines and other vehicles for hire. The ordinance will also continue requiring these companies to do self-inspections every 3,000 miles or 3 months. And then just kind of a timeline. The second reading is on Monday, November 2nd, but I just want to stress that is a Monday, not a Tuesday. So I'd be happy answering your questions.
Thank you, Jim. Very good job. Appreciate that. Council, did anybody have any questions?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to set a date of hearing and second reading for Monday, November 2nd, 2015 at 7 p.m.
Second.
Very good. Councilor Karski's made that motion to set that date of hearing, sent by Councilor Jamison. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing? Anderson?
No.
Erickson?
Yes.
That is passed 5-1. Item 38.
Item 38 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, approving the placement of 2 sculptures on public property.
Good evening. Russ Sorensen with the Planning and Building Services Department and Staff Liaison to the Visual Arts Commission. This evening before you is a resolution to place 2 sculptures. One is a Sculpture Walk 2010 People's Choice Award. That is a city-owned bronze sculpture known as Flower Dancing in the Wind. It was designed and constructed by artist Jerry McCullough from Washington. The sculpture depicts a Native American woman dancing in the wind, and it would be placed outdoors at the Washington Pavilions of Arts and Sciences within a portion of the Palladino Home Sculpture Garden in the southeast corner near the waterfall that is featured along Main Avenue. The second sculpture placement would be an indoor placement, and that would be the 2014 People's Choice Award, which is a city-owned bronze sculpture known as Worlds Her Canvas. It was designed and constructed by artists Sherry Treby and Lee Looney from South Dakota. This sculpture depicts a young painter visualizing her artwork. The proposed indoor placement would be within the main lobby, on the first floor of the Washington Pavilion of Arts and Science building, at the north grand staircase alcove. The Sioux Falls Visual Arts Commission reviewed both sculptures and their respective placements and unanimously recommends approval of these 2 sculpture placements. There would be no additional cost to the city that is associated with the placement of both of these sculptures. With me this evening is Mr. Larry Toll, who is the co-president of Washington Pavilion of Arts and Sciences. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Mr. Jack Palladino, who is a champion photographic artist, as well as a contributor to the Palladino Home Sculpture Garden. That concludes our staff report.
Russ, thank you very much. Did anybody want to speak on this item? Councilor Anderson Jr.?
One question, Russ. Who will be in charge of the maintenance of both of these items?
The city will be responsible for the maintenance of these sculptures. It's part of our maintenance program.
Won't pass over to the pavilion, or?
No, it'll be
under, okay.
It's part of us.
Would anybody want to make up? Yes, Councilor Jamison, sir.
One quick question on that same kind of line of thought. If somebody damages or defaces the statue, what happens?
We have the insurance for that, for any repairs and those kinds of situations.
Insurance, good,
Yes.
okay. I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
Councilor Jamison has made a motion to approve this, seconded by, was that Councilor Anderson Jr.? Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 39.
Item 39 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls approving the preliminary plan of Copper Creek Estates addition.
Jason Beer with Planning and Building Services. This is an application, and the owner is Ronning Companies. It's for roughly 76.5 acres, located at the southwest corner of East 26th Street and South 6 Mile Road. They are looking at constructing roughly 109 single-family lots with some interior drainage ways through the properties.
Jason, thank you. Did anybody want to speak to this item? Councilor Anderson Jr.?
Jason, just hope that we see a better site plan on the drainage there, because it looks like it could be very interesting for that property.
Yep, they will have, as we go through the process, their development engineering plans will get a lot more detailed, and those will be approved by the drainage engineers.
Councilor Bach.
Just a reminder, because we very often get into this, and I'm not sure I remember the answer to this question, but what does it mean when we're approving the preliminary plan for this addition? What happens after this? After
the approval of this, then they will submit the development engineering plans, and those get down to detail. Everything's pretty much detailed out through those. You are approving kind of the preliminary lot and block layout, utility extensions, but these go through review of all the engineers. It's kind of the first step, and then development engineering is your final step before they can start platting off lots.
Right, so basically what we're saying is we think it's going to pretty much look like that when it's done to sort of the layperson. The rest of it, all those details, the drainage and all those things will be worked out by engineers, people with some experience in that. Thank you.
Councilor Bach, would you mind?
Yeah, I would, Mr. Mayor, I would move approval, please.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Councilor Bach and Rolfing. Appreciate that. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 40.
Item 40 is a resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Annexation 3150, 2015, Barbers and No Blocks Edition.
The applicant and owner here is Mike Barber. It's roughly 3.3 acres. It's located on the west side of Sycamore Avenue between 69th Street and 57th Street. It is located within Tier 1 of our growth area map, and the proposed uses of the area is going to be combined with the development to the west here, and they're doing residential uses, which is consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Jason, thank you. Did anybody want to speak to this item?
Move for approval, Anderson. Oh, excuse me.
Would anybody want to second that?
Second.
Second it. Councilor Jameson.
Jason, where's the roundabout that's...
The roundabout would be to the west on Southeastern and 69th. So it's about a mile to the west on 69th Street. So a little south and a little west here.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski? Yes. Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 41.
Item 41 is a resolution including certain contiguous territory within the corporate limits of the City of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Annexation 3232, 2015, Madison and Veterans Parkway.
The applicant and owner here is Joel Engel. It's roughly 116 acres located east of Veterans Parkway and south of East Madison Street. It is located within Tier 1 of the city's growth area plan. They are proposing to construct an office, commercial, and residential development that is generally consistent with our Shape Sioux Falls comprehensive plan. It does indicate future residential with a regional employment center as you go south, and then also a business park designation for the Madison and Veterans Parkway intersection.
Thank you, Jason. Did anybody want to speak to this item? Councilors? Councilor Anderson Jr.?
You said there was going to be signage for Madison, or that last part you said about...
I said the intersection of Madison and Highway 100 has a business park designation, which allows office uses similar to what they're proposing.
How are we going to do 6th Street there since it's not completed?
Is Mark here? Do you?
Yes. I can wait for second reading on that.
This one doesn't have a second reading on it. Just
it's a resolution. Yeah.
I know that they are required to do a traffic study once they start going through the process of the rezoning and preliminary plan. We probably will have a better idea of what 6th Street's going to look like once we get to that point.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Would anybody want to
move for approval?
Thank you, Councilor.
Second.
Thank you, Councilor Rolfing. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach,
Yes.
Jamison.
Yes.
Karski. Rolfing.
Yes.
Anderson. Erickson.
Yes.
That is passed 6-0. Item 42.
Item 42 is a resolution authorizing use of construction manager at risk services for the construction of a mixed-use development, including private development and a parking ramp at the corner of 10th Street and Mall Avenue.
Good evening, Darren Smith, Director of Community Development. Well, as was just stated, item 42 is a resolution allowing us to use a construction manager at risk delivery method for a mixed-use parking ramp project. And as you folks know, we talked quite a bit about the project today and this specific topic. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Dick Strasberg with the Tegra Group to come back up and go into more detail, and then we'll answer any questions.
Darren, thank you. Welcome, Dick.
Good evening. So if we look at the choices we have on construction delivery methods, we basically have three choices that are common in this market. We have the traditional method, which is to do the plans, then bid the plans, and then select a general contractor. Second would be design build, where you hire a contractor who is also the one that's responsible for designing it. And the third would be construction manager at risk. At Tegra, we work with all three. We work with all three. On more complex projects, like the one you're looking at here, we recommend going with the construction manager at risk. And the biggest advantage of it is obtaining price information throughout the design process. And that's critical on a project like this because we've got three parties. Traditionally, you have one owner. Here we have three. So we have three different parties, all competing, all have to have, things that all work with each of the performance on each of the three different projects. With the construction manager at risk, we get that kind of pricing information as we go. We've got it designed right now in the proposed RFP that we'd have three pricings before we'd get to the guaranteed maximum price. So we'd have three different times to where it'd be a formal cost estimate. Another advantage is looking at the constructability. Looking at a ramp like this, now in Sioux Falls, precast is a very common, we've got with a large precaster here, one of the largest in the region, that's a real option. Traditionally, these ramps are post-tension concrete. Well, we need to dig into that. We need to dig into it. We need to get construction information as we go, do cost benefit analysis on it to make those kind of decisions. And then I think that probably the third thing is to note on this, what we're asking for is to do a RFP for a construction manager, and what the commitment is to take them through to the first phase. It's not through the full process, because we have the ability to unhook at the end of pre-construction if we aren't happy with the services they provide. And in the process we go through on selecting, it's very similar to a hard bid situation, with the exception of we drill into who do we get on the project. And as busy as it is in Sioux Falls, this will likely be determined by which CM has a staff member that's available to lead this project with the best credentials. It will also have to be competitive on their fee and on the defined general conditions. So our recommendation is to go with CM at risk on this.
Dick, thank you. Appreciate that. Before I turn over to the council, did anybody want to speak to this item? Welcome.
Bruce Danielson, I think I'm probably getting to be a broken record on this, but we're now looking at another building being built in Sioux Falls, and we don't even know yet if the first building came in the way we were promised. And we keep passing the buck, doing this construction manager at risk process and hiding the process from the people who are supposed to be paying for this in the end. And I just want you to think about it and talk about it some more and get some audits. Before you go voting on another one of these, what's wrong with getting an audit on the first one, second one, and the third one before we now do a fourth one? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Danielson. Appreciate that. Did anybody else want to speak to this item? Councilors? Yes, Councilor Jameson.
Question for Darren or Dick. I'm sorry. Probably, maybe you decide. So the previous parking ramps that have been built in the city were built under what type of management? Do you remember, even know, maybe? You're not old enough.
As far as the delivery method, no. I would say this, though. I know the CM at risk delivery method was relatively new to South Dakota and the City of Sioux Falls around 2000 and 2001. In fact, the reason we are required to make this request tonight is because of something we put in place in 2001, because it was a new delivery method, and that's, it's not the case anymore. It's very common on large complex projects, especially. So I can't answer that question, but my guess is probably not with CM at risk.
Yeah.
Those were also very straightforward projects, so just parking ramps.
Just if I could, one other feeling about this whole process is, so you do the bid or design and build, but you don't really know what it's going to cost until you bid it out. And so everybody's designing it, doing what they hope it or want it to be, and then the price comes in, and it's like, oh my gosh, we didn't think that.
Well, sorry.
Do I have it right that the construction manager at risk, I think you stated earlier, Dick, that there's a working knowledge of what these units are going to cost, and so you get tuned up and ready while you're doing it versus waiting until that last minute, until the bid goes.
Yeah, we have, in this, the process we designed for this would have 3 price checks where the plans they go out to the construction manager. They either use their in-house estimating department or they go out and talk to subcontractors to get more current pricing on it. So, and they're a partner through the whole thing on helping us decide if we do this method versus that method, help us out, give us cost information as we go. And then in the end, it's all bid. It's the work itself is actually all bid out, just like it is in a hard bid, with the exception of you can interview.
One last, if I could.
Please.
Is there any motivation for the contract manager at risk to save the city money? Do they have any incentives?
Typically, what we do is there's a train of thought that says that we should provide some kind of a benefit or share the savings and so on with the contractor. What we've learned is when it first came out 20 years ago, it was pretty common to do a 50-50 split or something like that with the contingency. And on the projects we've worked with in the last 10 years, we haven't had a single one with a split on it. And I can assure you contractors are banging on our door to do more of them. So what it does is it locks in. This becomes their bread and butter business because there's no opportunity for them to make additional money. This is their fee, and this is what they get paid on their general conditions, and that's it. So,
I'm sorry.
Please.
You said a fee.
Yeah.
So a lot of contractors get paid a commission based on the cost, the total project cost, like the architects as well do. But did I hear you right that the contract manager at risk really just gets a fee?
Yes.
Oh.
They get a fee, and it's in the case of the pre-construction services we're asking for, it's a fixed fee. It's a fixed dollar amount. They're basically paid to help put the project together and to provide cost estimates and so on. So then they get a fixed fee that goes into the project, and that's what their profit is.
Good job, Councilor Jameson. Councilor Anderson, Jr.
One last question. Is this a popular method in the private industry too? Or is this pretty much just a public?
No, it's really, in this case, it's very popular in the private sector. Most complicated projects are CM at risk in the private sector. And it's more recently kind of entered into the public realm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Urbanbach.
Could I ask Darren just one real quick question?
Absolutely. Darren?
Darren, we've known for several years now that we were going to have to build a parking ramp at some point. You've said when the parking rates get to X number percent full and overflowing and all of that, now we're at the 95% rate you said earlier today.
Low 90s. Yep.
Low 90s. So we're almost full, and some of the lots are actually overbooked, is what you told us. So we've known for several years that this was coming, that you've been planning it as an enterprise. It's part of your business plan as the parking department. We've known all along it was going to cost between about $9 and $12 million to build a parking ramp, right? Ish. It climbs, that number climbs over time, right? Let's just say $10 million. Let's say we're going to build a parking ramp for $10 million on that location. We're not going to do a hotel. We're not going to do the gym. We're not going to do any of that. We're just doing a parking ramp for $10 million. what does that get us then? Does that get us 600 parking spots if we only do the parking ramp there? Does it get us anything?
Yeah, I really don't think the fact that we're doing a mixed-use project, a much larger scale, the hotel, retail, apartments, and so forth, it really doesn't impact the cost of the ramp as substantially as you would think. There will be some minor impacts in the grand scheme of things as far as number of elevators, the width of stairwells, those types of things, because there's more people on site, different uses, fire codes, those types of things. But at the end of the day, when it goes out into the market to be bid, it's X amount per parking space is what you're looking at. And in some years, that's $15,000 a space. In some years, it's $20,000 or $25,000. It's really dependent on the market and the environment that you build in.
But my point is then that we could build a parking ramp for $10 million and get however many spaces for $10 million, right?
Oh, sure, yeah.
We can do that. And that is really what we're going to do, is build a parking ramp. But because of this whole complicated thing we're talking about, and we're putting it under this construction manager at risk, because we're willing to think differently about parking ramps, we're getting way more, right? But the city really is only going to spend X number of city dollars, and we're going to control that number. Is that right?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. At the end of the day, these other things really don't impact what we'll pay to build the ramp substantially. They will in a minor way, but we get so much more. Downtown wins, the community wins. We get these private uses, as we talked about today. The tax base, right now that lot pays $0. And the ramp will be taxed, have an assessed value of $0 and pay $0. But these other private uses, they will contribute significantly to the tax base. I mean, significantly, easily well into the six figures annually. So that's a big win, as well as, ironically, there's just a meeting tonight downtown on design standards. And most of the meeting was spent talking about one of our stated top goals in the recent 2025 downtown plan was to get mixed-use developments like this with mixed, multiple uses and so forth. And so they basically spelled out tonight, in a perfect world, what everyone would want downtown, and they basically described what we're talking about in this project. So
I'm just so excited to be part of a council that gets to vote on this, because we are making history in Sioux Falls with this right now. We're thinking differently about how we're going to do our development. Let's be okay with that. Let's move forward with this and not be so afraid of it. This is awesome. I'm just excited that we're doing this.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ermbach. Appreciate that. If I just, Councilor Ermbach she said, let's just say it were to cost $10 million.
Right, it's not, right.
Thank you.
There have been numbers batted around over the years. Anyone that, if I might, Mr. Mayor, anyone that pays attention to city government knows there have been numbers batted around for years as to what that parking ramp was going to cost.
But to date, there's been, Dick, maybe you should stand up if you wouldn't mind. If you would just reiterate to the people of Sioux Falls and the council, to date, there's been no estimate given on the cost of this.
Yeah, that's correct. And that's really the purpose of the next phase. We'll go through it, evaluate it, figure out what the most cost-effective way is to build it. And I can tell you, construction costs are up across the board, especially Sioux Falls. You have a very busy market here. You've got a lot going on here. So that's why we need to get through the process and get this, bring it out so we can really vet out what the cost is. One of the biggest factors you have on this parking ramp is what it's going to look like on the outside. If you want it to look like a typical parking ramp, or if you want it to blend in with the development above, that's one of the factors that can add some cost to it.
Thank you, Dick. I appreciate that. Just for the record, at 8:47, Dick Strasberg said there has been no cost estimate given on this project. Thank you. Very good. Dick, thanks for being here, too, on all of these journeys that we've had to date. We appreciate it. And I don't even, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Thank you, Councilor Buck. Thank you, Councilor Rolfing. We've got a motion. It's been seconded. A roll call vote, please.
Councilmembers Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That has passed 6-0. Item 43.
Item 43 is a resolution of the City of Sioux Falls to gift a 3-inch water meter to the City of Delmont, South Dakota.
Good evening again, Mayor and City Council. This is a good news story. There was a request made from the City of Delmont after their devastating storm this last summer for a 3-inch water meter. We did have one and offered it, and it would be our recommendation for you to approve and gift this 3-inch water meter to the city of Delmet.
Thank you, Mark. Did anybody want to speak to this item? Councilors?
For approval, Anderson.
Second, Karski.
Thank you, councilors. Appreciate that. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson? Erickson?
Yes.
Thank you. That is passed 6-0. Item 44.
Item 44 is a resolution advising and giving consent to the appointment of members to certain citizen boards, those being for Board of Health, Scott Bartlett, for Falls Community Health Center Governing Board, James Keller, Joyce Irwabutsu, Dr. Bruce Voigt, for Main Street Business Improvement District Board, Lyle Pudwell, David Syverson, for Property Maintenance Board of Appeals, George Hamilton, and Richard Scott.
Tamara, thank you very much. Council, did anybody want to make a motion on these items?
Move for approval, Anderson.
Second, Erickson.
Thank you. Councilor Anderson Jr. made that motion, seconded by Councilor Erickson. A roll call vote, please.
Council members Erpenbach?
Yes.
Jamison?
Yes.
Karski?
Yes.
Rolfing?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Erickson?
Yes.
Thank you, Council. That is passed 6-0. Item 45.
Item 45 is a report of the October 1st, 2015 notice of transfer of appropriations within major organizational units.
Thank you, Tamara. Council, if there's nothing else.
Move to adjourn, Karski.
Thank you, Councilor.
Second, Erpenbach.
It's been a motion to adjourn this meeting. It has been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned. Sioux Falls. Make it a great, great night. Thank you.